Welcome back to this edition of the Thriving Equine Professional. Now, I may have mentioned over the past few weeks that I have been on this quest and reaching out to some of my contacts and previous guests to bring you, our audience, a bunch of really cool news stories from people who aren't very far out of the student to professional transition. So today's guest is a shining example of a young and thriving equine professional who graduated just 4 short years ago and is building an incredible name for herself in the equine industry. So I want to welcome to the Thriving Equine Professional, Clara Quade. Clara, thank you so much for joining us today. And I am thrilled to have you and to share your journey with our guests. I mean, you've got some really cool things going on in life.
Thanks, Jodi. It is so exciting to be here. And yeah, it's definitely your 20s are a very turbulent, exciting time.
Well said. Well said. So let's talk about that. I always like to go back to the beginning a little bit of your story, Clara, just
Mhm.
to, let our listeners know, where'd you start? You're coming to us today from Belleville, Ohio, right?
Yes.
And
Yep.
so give us kind of the background on Clara, as I like to ask the question, were you the horse crazy girl or the crazy horse girl? And so tell us a little bit about early Clara.
Yes, I absolutely was the horse crazy girl. You fall in love at a young age and you catch that bug and it just never goes away. So I am from Minnesota originally and grew up there. And so Minnesota, you have to look a little bit more for the horses. There was lots of horses and stables around where we lived, but looking for the industry, you have to look a little harder. So there were ponies down the road growing up, and I would go down and play with them and just wanted to know everything about them. So I read every horse book I could get my hands on, watched every horse movie, and begged, of course. There's always that time you beg your parents for a horse. And my parents very kindly told me, yes, you can absolutely have a horse when you save up the money for it and buy it yourself.
There you go.
So,
Thanks, Mom and Dad.
right. Yeah. Which at the time, I was like, oh, come on. It's not that much. And, scrolling the ad pages and I could buy this one. And then I was always told, yes, but then what about feeding it? And I was like, oh, I couldn't really do that. So now, though, I'm very thankful that they pushed me to do all of that myself.
Well, and it sounds like they were really active. And to your
Yes,
point, I think a lot of parents expect us to grow out of the horse bug, as you say,
100%.
and you didn't. And so tell us then about some of the steps that they helped you move forward in. I think, from an early age, you were instructed, go work with horses, go work.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. And I'm so thankful for that. My parents have been a major part of this journey and still are today. They have been my sounding boards for everything. And so, starting out when I was younger, I was very quiet, reserved. Public speaking was my worst fear. And here we are today. But I just love the horses so much. And so my parents would get me riding lessons for my birthday in the summer. And then my church youth group would go to a camp in northern Minnesota every winter for a winter retreat. And at this camp, they had a ranch. And in the summer, they would do horse camps all summer long. And so my mom went and asked them some information on hiring staff and came back to me and said, I really think you should do this. You will get to work with horses. It's going to push you outside your comfort zone. And I balked at that at first. I was like, no, that is too far outside my comfort zone. I don't want to do that. I want to be with the horses, but it was a scary step. But they continue to encourage me to do that and get me the information. And so at 13 to 14 years old, I did that. And that
Wow.
was my first like real job, and would go, for a little bit of the summer and then more of the summer and more of the summer each year through high school. And it ended up being the best possible experience. I got to work with the horses every day. I was teaching kids how to ride. So I was getting that experience of instructing classes, even though it was little kids, and made some lifelong friendships. I'm still best friends with one of the girls that I met here today, and we're both kind of inspiring each other in the equine industry. But yeah, that was really my parents encouraging me outside my comfort zone. But that created this habitual mindset of, okay, I can step outside my comfort zone. I can do the hard thing and grow from that. And so that was kind of the starting catalyst. And so then one summer I came home and I was like, Dad, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
I
And so,
love that. And
yep.
there's so much wisdom in that, Clara, because what I also hear, like props to your parents. We all need, some
Oh, yeah.
people, whether it's your parents or whether it's a mentor or a riding instructor or something, find those people that do push you,
Yes.
because what I'm hearing from you is what we try so hard to translate into young people today is go work, go work, go work,
Yes.
right? Like you have
It's
to go
so important.
work and experience some of these things that you're not going to experience just by being in a, say, family business or not
Mhm.
working at all or something like that. So
Yeah.
so you came home and told dad, well, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life. And did he fall over or did he cheer you
Nope.
on?
Immediately right back. He's like, well, then I guess you're going to go to college for that. So that started that process, which I've always really enjoyed school. And so I was already taking college classes in high school. So then my dad's very business minded. He's an accountant, so he's a numbers guy. So he was immediately researching colleges with equine programs that would then my credits from the colleges I was at in high school would transfer to. And so he really helped figure all of that out. And we had a list, but it
Okay.
all started with Googling what are the top equine schools in the United States and going from there.
Okay. How many schools did you visit? Do you remember? Like, how many did you actually go
Let's
visit?
see. So I went to one in Missouri,
Okay.
and then Asbury University in Kentucky. And then up here in Ohio, I visited three different schools and then one in Wisconsin, I believe.
Okay.
So yeah, we kind
So,
of made a big loop, and just my family's road trippers, so we just made a huge trip out of it.
yes, I love that. I am a road tripper, Gypsy Jodi. I
Oh,
am.
love it.
I'm yes, it speaks to my heart. So
Uh-huh.
you looked at all these schools. You visited three, four, five, six
Hmm.
schools, and so let
Yep.
the listeners know you
Yep.
landed
I
where.
I ended up at Asbury University, which was it was originally my second choice, but then became my first when I went and visited and learned a lot more about the program. Because again, being a little more reserved, most of the other schools are very showing oriented.
Okay.
And I was always really interested in learning how to train the horses, but I never wanted to show initially, just because whatever stereotype is kind of around that, I was like, I don't know that I'm going to make it in that environment. So again, a little hesitant there. And then going to Asbury and realizing that Jessie Westfall was teaching down there and Stacy Westfall was related to that, which being in Minnesota, I had no idea what the sport of reining was,
Right.
which is what they do. And I just knew I was like, they're great trainers. Sign
Yeah.
me up. So that is where I
Yes.
ended up.
Okay, so and did you love Asbury?
I did. I absolutely loved it. I think some people are maybe disappointed in their college experience, but I 100% believe that you're going to get out of it what you put into it. And that is the mindset that I went in with, and I wanted it so bad. So I was out there as many hours as I possibly could be. I took as many classes as I could, and I was there for 3 years because of the credits that I had transferred in. And
Right.
so that it was like packing everything in while I could. And so I was training as many horses. I went through their police mount program and worked with several colts through that and took, every one of Jesse's training classes at least once, if not twice or more. And then working out at the farm, just as much hands-on as I could and was
Yes.
really intentional in that. And so I loved my time there and I made great connections.
Wow. And so a couple things that I try to pick up on, Clara, the word intentional always just neon lights for me, right? When we are
Mhm.
purposeful and intentional. But I'll go back and say you did your due diligence in selecting the school and then visiting
Mhm.
and making the choice based on your values, goals, and
Yeah.
objectives. And so what you just said to us, because of the hands-on, and even I remember making a similar decision, and so many of our listeners are in that right now. When you are looking at and choosing the college that you will spend 3 or 4 years at or more
Mhm.
for some people,
Right.
then you are oftentimes faced with a college program that might be less hands-on versus a college program that gives you a great deal of hands-on. I, for one,
Right.
knew, like you are saying, I want to be hands-on. I am so
Mhm.
much more engaged and easier educated if I am involved in what's going on. So I knew that I didn't want to go to a big land grant university that was more, in
Mhm.
my opinion, driven by research and academics. Then I want to work at the farm and I want to be a part of what's going on and practical application. So I think that sharing that with our listeners, I really just want to A, give you props for that, but B, make sure that our listeners are hearing you say, I was intentional and wanted to be hands-on and part of the training and developing rather than simply classroom.
Mhm.
It's a balance,
It
right?
is. Yeah, for sure. And that's, it's a little hard sometimes when you have access to horses and being out at the barn to then want to come back and do homework. So that was very much, again, then that intentionality had to carry over the other way as well to put my best effort and just make sure I set aside time blocks to be very concentrated effort in that time to
Yeah,
make sure I got done what I needed to get done. I got the best grades that I could and work hard at that because, it wasn't all equine classes. I had business classes too, and then everybody's dreaded gen eds. So pushing through those and being able to keep that consistency of effort across the board. Did I always succeed? No, but that I would then come back the next day and try again. So
yeah.
that
Progress
was,
over perfection.
yes, exactly.
Always, always. Okay, so then I also want to acknowledge that you are what I call a COVID grad. So you
Yeah.
graduated college in 2020, right?
Yeah, yeah, graduated in quotes, Um, we never really got the graduation thing. Yeah, so that was again one of those terrible, which it was terrible for everybody and it turned everybody's world upside down. And so in the time it was horrible, but looking back, again, it's one of those things that becomes a catalyst for the direction that you wanted to go. I remember my senior year or yeah, year semester, everyone starts asking you that awful question that you hate. So, what are you doing after graduation? And I coming in, I was like, well, there's horse trainer or there's barn manager. Like that's all I knew. And being in college, it broadened my horizons a bit more and realizing, wow, there's a lot more out there, but I don't really know. I was still kind of thinking the barn manager outlet and then realizing, I'm kind of an achiever. I like to keep climbing, keep getting better and improving. And barn manager, you kind of hit the ceiling
Right.
pretty quick. And so I was like, well, I don't really know if I want to go that direction. Deep down, my dream was to train horses, but again, your dreams are scary. And so everyone would ask, and I'd always say, yeah, manager, manager. And finally, I just said, I don't know. I have
Right.
no idea what I'm going to do after graduation. And,
And
people get,
that's okay.
right? Yeah. People get a little shocked when you tell them that. And they're like, what do you mean? But that was the honest answer.
Right.
And so then 6 weeks before what would have been graduation, everyone got sent home. And suddenly it's that loss of community, it's a loss of direction, and all of the chances and opportunities of what I thought might come after graduation, all of that's gone. And it's just a giant looming cliff that you don't really want to jump over. And so going home, I was home for 6 weeks in Minnesota to finish up most of my classes. And then the last week of classes, finals week, I ended up moving myself back down to Kentucky and living in Wilmore, which is where Asbury University is, all by myself. And it was because my police colt hadn't yet been picked up by his department. And I was like, I worked hard at this. I want to finish him before he goes to his department. I don't want him to just sit there and backtrack. I don't want someone else to finish him. Like, I want to put that final bit of effort in. And so I moved back down there, and I'd been connected with a veterinarian at Rood and Riddle my senior, like the last semester, and had been cleaning stalls for him in the middle of all the other things that I was doing.
Okay.
And so I called him up and I was like, hey, do you need essentially a barn manager and someone to do more work and keep things running for you because your schedule is insane?
Right.
And he was like, yeah, we'll take you on. And so I moved back down to work as a barn manager and finish training my police colt.
That is incredible. So that's a piece that I didn't know, Clara. And I again, that just shows your resilience, your grit, your determination that, that cult was yours
Yeah.
essentially. And you wanted to make sure that that police force got the best possible horse that they
Mhm.
were paying money for, right? Like so
Right.
those are
Yeah.
generally, if I have heard correctly, those horses are paid for years in advance and they are
Yeah.
on a wait list to go
hmm
to where they are intended to go.
Yes. And so it was like, he's just going to be sitting there, time that they paid for, that he's
Right.
not getting any more training during.
Yeah.
So it ended up, it was a great decision. Very hard, very lonely,
Yes.
but a great decision. There ended up being one other girl who was there as well, and her police colt was going to the same place mine was, which is Vancouver, Canada.
Okay.
And so the two of us, we ended up being roommates for the summer and much longer after that. But we got to finish our colts together, and it actually was really good to then we got to do some extra things with them to give them
Good for
experience.
you.
So,
That's absolutely incredible. What a cool little piece of your
mhm,
story. So then you became a barn manager while you were
mhm,
finishing that project. And so walk us through kind of that first job, but then you stepped into what I call an industry job.
mhm.
So from barn manager to customer service. Let's talk about that.
Yes. Yeah. So, barn management for this veterinarian, he had a recip foaling farm. And so it's show mares that they've transferred the embryo into a recipient mare, and the mare carries it to term. And then he would have them at his farm for clients and foal them out. And so it was a lot, it was very hectic. There were a lot of babies running around.
Yeah.
Um, so it was just kind of the day to day of caring for them, which was great transition. So my major at Asbury, it was equine studies with the concentrations in management and science, and then a minor in business. And I love the science. I find it really fascinating. And so that was fun because equine veterinarians, all the ones that I have met are really intentional about being educational, and they really
Yes.
enjoy helping people understand what they're doing. And so it was a lot of hands-on stuff with that, which I really enjoyed. I really enjoyed the breeding and the foaling. So that was really enjoyable. A lot of long work days, you're out in the sun just roasting every day. But it was really good experience and a good transitional job because it was a lot of the things that I'd had the groundwork experience for in college and at the ranch in high school. And so that was a good transition. But then at the end of the summer, right before my police colt left, I bought my first horse. So that dream of my parents saying you can have it as soon as you save up for it and buy it, that took about 10 years.
Okay, that's
Um,
right. Dreams
yep.
are not meant to happen overnight, right?
No, not at all. And it made it all the more worth it. She's my dream horse. So that was super exciting, but it kind of makes you realize you're like, oh, they are expensive. My parents were correct. And so I was like, I think I need a job that's going to be a little, just have a little bit more to cover the expenses.
Right.
And so through my college time, summers and such, internships, I've always been very careful and thought through the options that I was choosing for what I was doing. Because again, I had no idea which direction I wanted to go. And so I wanted to be able to go any direction. And so I chose different things every summer intentionally to get me different experience and different skills. And so that then was kind of the same with this of, all right, customer service. You're always going to need to know how to deal with people. That is a
Amen.
fact of life. So that this veterinarian, he worked for the equine hospital at Rood and Riddle, and he knew I was thinking about kind of moving on to a little bit more of a regular job. And he was like, hey, they have an opening at the Rood and Riddle pharmacy. I will put you forward if that's the direction that you want to go. And so I took him up on that and got the position there, starting out as customer service. And then I got my pharmacy technician license. I studied for that and took that exam. So then I could be an actual licensed technician to work with the labels for all the prescription drugs.
Wow. Clara, there's just so much here, right? I hope that our listeners are hearing your passion, but also just the wisdom that comes from what you did. You talked about, we didn't even touch on some of your internships, but the wisdom that you chose different internships on purpose because you
Mhm.
wanted all the experience that you could. You made the comment on your last semester and the pandemic experience that the loss of community and the loneliness, we have to
Mhm.
acknowledge these kinds of things
Yeah.
and be able to understand the impact on each of us personally and professionally. And so then, but I'm also hearing just how well you are doing in creating your own network. So, this veterinarian, it's not just that everyone that we meet is going to recommend us to other people. We have to create that kind of impact, that kind of memorable experience. And
Mhm.
oftentimes we have to share our dreams and our hopes and our aspirations so that they know that when that opportunity presents itself, such as an opportunity to be on staff at the Rood and Riddle Veterinary Pharmacy, that you are getting recommended into that.
Mhm.
And no longer are jobs just by application. I am quick to
Right.
remind that, the careers and jobs that we want, folks, that happens because of a network that you've built with intention and purpose. Would you agree?
Oh, 100%. All of my jobs, especially after graduation, I've gotten all of those based on connections. 100%. Otherwise, my application never would have made it in the door. It's just
Yes.
the way that it is, the way that technology is being used to screen these things. It's about who you know.
It is about who you know. Hear this, Thrivers. Like listeners, just take that in. I talk so much about the importance of helping to coach our undergraduates and our younger people on building a network. Your network is your net worth ultimately. And that is
Mhm.
not just money. When I say net worth, that's not just your money. That is your network is everything to who you are and who you are becoming personally and professionally. So, just what a cool journey to this point. So, and then you went above and beyond and you gained additional education and credentials by becoming a licensed pharmacy tech. So, and this is always all about our listeners hearing opportunities. So maybe there's
Mhm.
someone out there that's listening that's like, "Oh my gosh, I never thought that I could be a pharmacy technician in a animal pharmacy, right? A
Yeah,
veterinary pharmacy." And boy, isn't that a really busy and dynamic business
for
happening
sure.
at Rood and Riddle Veterinary Pharmacy, right?
Yeah.
Like, what a cool experience.
I think it's a great, great starter place to go to get into the industry, equine and animal health. It's, yeah, a really great job to get that ground experience that then is going to open your eyes to what else is out there.
Yes.
and give you the connections to go from there. Because Rood and Riddle it's a hotspot of connections.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a
Yeah,
great
what a
experience.
cool culture, what incredible people. Those are some of my favorite people in the world, certainly.
Hmm.
So then you made the decision to take the next step, Clara. And
Yes.
so you spent your first big girl job, maybe, or
Yeah.
second, right?
Yep.
As I will say, are multiple dream jobs. So that dream job led you to the next opportunity where you stepped outside of what I'll call more of a local or regional type sales and customer service role into a larger national footprint sales type role. So tell
Yes.
us about kind of how that evolved. Was that what you were looking for, or did that come from a connection?
Yes, so it actually was both. And so the driver for that change is it again, it was my horse, but I knew I wanted to, in talking with Jesse Westfall and continuing to learn from him after graduating college, because I was able to keep my mare at Asbury University after graduation and get to ride with him, which is such a huge blessing. Oh my
Oh,
gosh.
incredible.
He is such a great teacher, and I've learned and continue to learn so much from him. And so from there, I knew, okay, I do want to be a coach and a trainer. I want to be able to help people with their own horses because I can see how much I get out of learning and continuing to learn with my horse. And then I also really wanted to get into the reining, and reining is not huge in Kentucky. And so I decided I wanted to move to Ohio, where reining is very big.
Yeah.
And also, that means when you're doing reining, you have to have a specific kind of arena and footing to ride and work on some of the maneuvers. And so I just knew there'd be much more opportunity for that here in Ohio. And so I wanted to look for a job that would allow me to move to Ohio, but would also have some flexibility for horse shows. And as I start to build a business, and that's going to come in remote work.
Yeah.
And so I had heard of a company called Covetrus from working at Rood and Riddle because they have pharmaceuticals and distribution. And so we would carry some of their products.
Mhm.
So that's just kind of a regulatory legal thing. We can't compound what is already on the market as generic. And so we would carry their products to distribute. And so from there, then I was able to get in touch with our rep, and that was through communication with my manager at Rood and Riddle. Actually, we kind of talked through that of I'm ready to take the next step and move on. And here's what I'm looking for. And I want to give you the time then to look for a replacement for me. So then that connection, I'd never met our rep before. I talked to him on the phone. He put me in connection with one of the tech sales regional people there in Kentucky. I talked to her on the phone, and both of them put then their recommendations in for me to apply for a technology sales executive position. And again, I've never worked in tech, never worked in sales, but looking at it, some of my internships in college, I've worked in hospitality, I've worked in legal and regulatory, I've worked in administration. So all of these things, management, all those skills, I wanted to keep building out kind of that resume of skills. So then the next thing, looking at building a business, you have to know how to sell yourself. And what you do. And I had no experience in how to talk about that. And so I wanted to learn that because a lot of these jobs, they do have requirements listed, but they're also going to be teaching you how to do the job.
Right.
And so I was very confident in my ability to learn. And that's coming out of college with a curiosity to want to know how everything works. And so I knew I could learn any position that I was handed. And that then gave me the talking points in the interview. And so I got that job with Covetrus, and it was remote, full-time sales position. And I was able to move to Ohio then.
Wow. It all sounds, when people see these kinds of journeys on LinkedIn or they hear you talk about things, it all sounds like, oh my gosh, you've got your stuff together. You knew what you wanted every step of the way, and you've made these connections and you've just made it happen. It's not quite that easy, right?
Right.
And
there's,
so,
there's oh, I was just a lot of second guessing for sure.
yes. And that's what I want our listeners to hear is that you, like, yes, you're intentional and purposeful, but there is a lot of second guessing to the decisions you make along the way. And it's not, these kinds of successes don't come without the blood, sweat, and tears. So
Mm-hmm.
you mentioned that, your learning mindset. I love the word curiosity, so I'm not going to let that go without just saying, okay, Clara, there was your wisdom in that clip, was
Uh-huh.
coming out of college with curiosity to learn.
Yes. Yeah, that'll get you so far in life. And again, making a habit of stepping towards the uncomfortable. But if you can show yourself that you can learn new things and you're willing, that's the big part is so many people aren't sure deep down if they're actually willing to learn because learning is uncomfortable because it shows you what you don't know.
Yeah.
And so that if you can switch into that mindset instead of feeling like, I can't do this, there's no way I could ever accomplish that, I'm not her, then switch it instead to, but what if I could learn how to do that? Can I learn how to ask the right questions? That's a lot of what learning is learning how to ask the right questions and being willing to get past the fear if someone's going to think you're not smart enough to figure it out or don't have the talent. It's not about having the talent. It's about having the work ethic and the willingness to open up and say, hey, I don't know how to do this. I would really love some help here, and asking other people for their wisdom.
Mm, boom, mic drop. We can finish the episode here, right?
Done.
We can't because the most exciting part is coming.
Uh-huh.
Clara, you are an entrepreneur now.
Yes.
You are 4 years out of college and you have claraquade.com.
Yes, I do.
Yes. Tell us all about what you are doing.
Yeah. So throughout all this time of these different jobs out of college, I also was on the side, and that phrase is going to come back later. But I was starting to help people, give them lessons on how to work with their own horses while continuing to learn further horsemanship and training in different disciplines with my horse. And I wanted to be able to continue to offer that to people, but you also have to keep learning to keep having things to offer. And so, especially reaching my dreams and aspirations, being a trainer and coach, I want to do that at a higher level. Right now, I'm giving what I can and what I know. And so it was starting to build that a little bit. I had some clients in Kentucky and then moving to Ohio. It's hard starting over someplace new when nobody knows you is really, really hard. And I still, I'm still considered a nobody, not really a known name, but that's what I'm working on building. And I'm so incredibly thankful. So Jesse and Stacy Westfall live up here very near Belleville. And so that moving to Ohio, originally I was down by Columbus, and that was so that I would have closer proximity to continue to learn from them and just to be immersed in the reining industry because that's what I want to do. There is very much something to be said about putting yourself in the environment where you are surrounded by people doing what you want to do. And so that has been kind of building that, and through word of mouth, the person that I have come out and do body work on my horse, she was working on some other clients and she was like, you to help support your horse, you really could learn these few things. And I've got a girl who can help you with that. And so it's become this network, this word of mouth kind of a thing, which is it's slow. Being an entrepreneur, it's a grind and it's hard work. And there are some days when you wake up and you don't feel like doing it. And then there's other days that you're just on fire, and it's making the choice to continue no matter how you feel each day. But in that time, then working at Covetrus, I had this again kind of on the side. I knew it was what I wanted to do, but it kind of stayed in a little bubble and started showing my mare and reining. And then this summer was kind of a big change, but it was really an opportunity to dive into focusing on that business and kind of sink or swim.
Yes. That's absolutely incredible. And again, you just share so much of the reality. And entrepreneurship is not glamorous.
No.
It it's slow and tedious rather
Uh-huh.
than glamorous, and it's scary, right?
Yes, very scary.
And so I just love that that's been this dream that now you are pouring yourself into. And
Mhm.
I don't want to dismiss the gravity of that and just how hard that has to be. And yeah, you're right. That the analogy that you made about, yeah, some days you don't want to do it. You wake up, you open your eyes, and you're like, not today,
Yeah,
but you do it. You do it anyway.
exactly. Yep.
And so I think that there's just so much for us to take away from the importance of that. Keep doing life. Just keep
Hmm.
doing.
Just the
Um
next step. That's
yeah.
all you have to do.
Yes, just the
Hmm.
next step. So good. So, as we share your story and inspire so many people with where you are and what you do, what else, Clara, would you share? I think you've talked about your learning mindset, but you also say something about ownership and your identity. So, tell us a little bit about that advice that you like to share.
Yeah. Yeah. So that has actually been a big shift for me this summer. So I was so excited to talk about it here because I think it's something that is very helpful for a lot of people, but especially people in my generation, my age, because we're searching to put our identity everywhere. And so that is something, knowing who you are and your worth as a person, you growing in confidence in yourself. But that's really hard, especially as an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of no's. You're gonna get a lot of no's. And so the big thing for me is I had, these full-time industry jobs, and it wasn't until later this summer. So this summer was kind of, okay, I'm going to buckle down. I'm just going to have my business. And I'm going to work on that and see if I can make it and where we're going to go from there and not have the 9 to 5 to rely on. And so that's really scary coming out of that. And I noticed that, meeting people all the time, they always ask, what do you do? And I would always say the first thing out of my mouth would be, oh, well, I've been in tech sales. And I'm kind of building my business coaching and training horses. It was always this side thing of like, kind of, I'm not sure that it feels breakable. I'm not sure I want to put it out there as this is what I'm doing. But then, another month went on, and that's again, it's this mind of, oh, all I have is my business right now. That is my full-time job. And I'm teaching these people and I'm training horses, and I was showing my horse, and then also had a little 8-year-old that I was coaching in the short stirrup class, which if you ever get the chance, go watch the short stirrup class in reining. It's the most adorable thing you're ever going to see. So that was super fun, but I had a girl ask me, oh, so are you just showing in the open class? Because non-professionals can show in the open or professional class, but professionals cannot show and go back into the non-pro and do
Right.
both. So she was like, are you a professional? Do you have your professional's card with the National Reining Horse Association, or are you just kind of stepping in and showing here for fun? And so that kind of, I mean, it forces the answer, right? Of
Yes.
no, I am a professional. I have my professional's card. I have a client here that I'm coaching, even though she's 8 years old. And so stepping into that and that shifted something in me of I am the professional here and I am the trainer and the coach. And for a long time, it felt very uncomfortable to step into that. And I like to call it your identity role because it's not actually who you are as a person and it does not define your worth of who you really are. But it is something that you're stepping into as your purpose and what you're doing. And it felt really uncomfortable trying to step into that. It felt insecure. There were a lot of just doubts in my mind. You hear those voices of, oh, you're not worthy of calling yourself that. Who do you think you are, putting yourself in the same category as all these amazing trainers? And so it really is a mind game more than anything else. And that's the reason why I would tell people my business is a secondary thing, is because I didn't feel like I was worth being able to put my dream out there as what I'm doing
Yeah.
and step into that. And so, kind of that moment of her asking that forced me to try that on. And from there, then that has completely shifted my confidence. And I'm so thankful for the chance to focus solely on my business and have that be the only thing supporting me, because then that has led to the confidence of people ask what I do. And I say, I'm a horse trainer and I'm a coach in progress. There's a little
Yes.
asterisk there. I'm always still growing and learning, but that is what I'm doing. And now having the confidence to say that and actually fully step into that. And that gives me the confidence then teaching and training instead of feeling like, oh, am I giving them what they need? Or let's have a conversation about it. Let's keep these things very clear and open because I know I'm confident in what I know. I'm confident that I have a lot to learn and I'll get there someday, but let's talk and have a conversation about it to make sure we're on the same page and that there's actually a good relationship here.
Oh, I love this. And I'm always quick to remind so many of us, myself included, that it is progress, not perfection. There is
Hmm.
truly, really not an end finish line. There's not a finish line, right?
Right. Yeah.
Until we are called home, there is no finish line.
Hmm.
And I think that the term practicing medicine, when we talk about doctors
Mm,
and
yes.
veterinarians, they are practicing medicine. They're some of the most educated folks that we know. But guess what? We have actually said that we acknowledge that they are practicing medicine on
Yeah.
us and on our animals.
Yes.
So the rest of us are out here just practicing life. We're
Yeah. I love that.
practicing what we're doing. And when you go in with that kind of a mindset, to your point, then step into your identity role. I love this, and I'm going to adopt this Claraism
Mhm.
of your identity role, right? And it plays right into a question that I always ask that I'm going to go ahead and ask of you next is, what is a piece of advice, Clara, that in your young tenure, your mid 20s, you're a young professional, a recent graduate. What is one piece of advice related to life balance that you would give our listeners in the face of today's hustle culture? Because I
Yeah.
think that plays right into what you've been talking about.
Yeah, and it's really hard to navigate. I've definitely been, and again, I'm very young. I have a lot more to learn about it, but definitely have gotten the opportunity to learn a lot more about it in the last couple of years. I think 2020 brought the world to a screeching halt, and then we all woke up afterwards, and things seemed way more chaotic and a lot more hustle. And so, something that I always think about is there's no such thing as perfect balance. And when you get caught up trying to get that perfect balance of, I have my social life and I have my rest and I have my hobbies and I have my work. And if you're an entrepreneur, I have my business. And you're trying to juggle all of these things and you're constantly like, how can I keep them in perfect balance? You're going to completely wear yourself out. And so look at it as seasons, which I know that's kind of cliche, but looking at the seasons of life of there's going to be times where things are out of balance, where you're hustling more and you're going to have less rest. You're going to have less social time. And then there's going to be other times where you need to scale back. It's not really an option. If you don't scale back, your body's going to take it anyway, and it's not going to be fun. I've been there. And so then there's going to be those times where, yeah, you spend a little more time on your hobbies. You're really being intentional with your community and your relationships. But there's multiple factors there, right? And so, like, when I moved up here to Ohio, I was very adamant about, I picked my goals on what I was going to be non-negotiable about. And so one of those things is health and fitness and making sure I'm exercising. I like to lift because it's so versatile for all the farm work, for training, and for just like cleaning stalls and throwing hay bales around and eating right. And then another one was social life, making friends because I'm moving to a new place and I don't have any friends up here. So it was, all right, I'm going to make friends. I'm going to get plugged into a church and develop a community there. And then work, of course, focusing on that. Business, building my business and training my horse and getting my name out there. And so looking at those different areas of life, you can have a combination of a couple of them that you're focusing on at a time and kind of rotate through. But the biggest thing that I've done for that is finding kind of the smaller things that this really recharges me. So living up here at Belleville, I have state parks practically in the backyard. And so I love to hike, and that's a good way to get some exercise, to take a break from the screen time from doing work and business things, but also it's not anything to do with my business, but that I can do. That's my Sundays. I'm very protective of my Sundays. I go to church, I come home, and I go on a hike. And so that, be protective of your time, be intentional with your time, block it off. Don't let other things creep into those different areas. When it's time to work, work. That is something that I struggle with every day, setting those boundaries between those aspects of life. But yeah, find the little things that are going to recharge you and find a way to work them in as a flow.
Good stuff. Good stuff. And so I'm going, and I love that we're going to find the little things. I'm a hiker also, so maybe
I
we'll
love
find
it.
ourselves in the same zip code one day and we'll get to go on a hike
Yes.
together.
You should totally come up and hike in Ohio.
Yes. And so my next question for you as we finish up, Clara, is there a particular book or podcast that you would recommend to our listeners? And if so, why?
Yes. So a book, it is one of my favorite books. And actually my manager at the Rood and Riddle Pharmacy is the one who gave it to me, is The Talent Code, and it's by Daniel Coyle. And so what he talks about in there is talent is not necessarily born, it's grown. And looking at different hotspots around the world of why do we have this certain kind of person, this group of people who's really talented at this, coming from this one specific part of the world. And so he went around and looked at all of these and studied that. And the fact that, so many times we think you have to be really talented at something to be really good at it. But a lot of times those people have just worked really hard. And so he really dives into like the biology and the scientific side of that, as well as the mindset stuff of how when you really focus in on something and you really pour your effort into it, that concentrated effort is going to result in compounded growth versus
Wow.
spreading it out over multiple things. And so I love that because, there are definitely people who are very gifted, born very gifted at different things.
Yes.
They have an ear for music, they have the athletic ability for basketball, but there also is something to be said for working really hard at it if you really want it. And those people, it depends person to person, but a lot of times the people who really want it and work hard for it, they have the grit to go further. And so that I love that because I think so many people just don't have the confidence to reach for their dreams. There's all these things of I'm not good enough. I don't have what it takes. I don't have the talent for it. But there's something, if you can work through the mental side of that and put in the effort. I think everyone should go chase their dreams. Again, it's not something that happens overnight. It happens over decades.
Right.
But yeah, I
Oh,
absolutely love that book.
that is such a great ad. I haven't heard of that, so I'm putting that on my list. Clara, you are wise beyond your years.
Thank
I'm
you.
so excited that, as I said to our listeners when we started this episode, really working on bringing some, great Gen Zers in. You have
Mhm.
set the bar high, Clara Quade, to be with us today. So thank you for representing Gen Z so beautifully in who you are and what you stand for and what you do. I want to make sure that our listeners also know where to find you. So I mentioned claraquade.com. So that is
Mhm.
your website. But then where else? You and I are connected on LinkedIn. I'm a huge LinkedIn
Yes.
proponent. So I know you are there.
Mhm.
And anything else you want to share with our listeners?
So any other areas, Instagram, Facebook, you can find me there, which also if you go to my website, that'll link to those profiles as well. But
Okay.
yeah, thank you so much for having me on your podcast, Jodi. This has been such a pleasure to get to speak with you today.
Oh, it's just been so much fun. I can't wait for this one. Our listeners, just what a treat you've gotten today. And we want to watch you grow and thrive, Claire Quade. So thanks for being here. And Thrivers, we will see you back here, same time next week. Cheers.